We are almost into December. This weekend has been Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and not to be outdone, there is a Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal, which is on the brucewhipple.com. If you go to boot camp, it's on the all-new Deep Dive Boot Camp. So if you have not gotten that, you might want to think about doing that, because that will expire on midnight Monday, our time in New York. Okay, a couple of things that people have asked me about that I wanted to pass on is, could you talk a little bit about some success stories? So we're going to do that. These are not their real names. I'm not going to disclose the industry. While I signed up to get all kinds of people contacting me, they did not. So I don't want to put them in that world, but I want to pass on these. So I got an email last Friday night from let's call her Tanya, okay? And it read as follows. Well, it was a long process, and we had to settle on the right structure to get this deal done. The purchase price was $2.3 million with $715,000 seller carryback, but I don't pay on the seller note until after the SBA loan has finished its term. The company has done an average of $1.4 million in revenue and cash flowing $958,000. Boy, that is strong. And she explains why that is in the industry she's in, and I am not going to divulge that. She goes on to say, I learned a lot about myself during the process. I have been running the company for 2 weeks and rolling up my sleeves and learning the day-to-day operations, and will be implementing upgrade systems and processes over time. Thank you again, as I learned a lot with your course. I have to admit, I do not even remember talking to Tanya. And when I went back and looked at it, she bought one of my original courses. At that time, I don't do this anymore, but at that time, I did 2 30-minute calls after you went through the course. So she obviously availed herself of those. I did not talk to her at all after that. Just had no reason to. She didn't contact me. I didn't contact her, and she got on with doing this. But that was a couple of years ago. I asked her, how did you work the 5% SBA equity? Because typically the SBA loans you need 10% equity. 5% can come from the seller. 5% is supposed to come from you. She didn't have the 5% from her. Hi, Bruce, she continued. I convinced the seller to take a full standby. He is a younger man, 30 years old, and he didn't mind it. You have my permission to use my experience as a testimonial, which is what we're doing. Okay, so then I wrote back to her, so the bank accepted his standby letter of credit as your down payment. Very nice. She said, yes, that is correct. Then I asked her, did you escape the personal guarantee? If so, that would be quite fantastic. No, I wasn't able to on this deal because I used SBA financing. I will go the route of commercial financing from here on out. So, for those that think they can't do an SBA deal, I think Tanya would tell you that she thinks differently. The second is a mentee. Let's call him Jake. And not Jake from State Farm, we'll call him Jake. And he wrote to me and said, Mr. Whipple, first deal closed, $2 to $2.5 million in revenue, price $1.3 million. He is in healthcare. He bought my course back in August of 2019, which was before the COVID pandemic. He had accumulated 4 or 5 LOIs pre-pandemic, and then during the pandemic, the healthcare sector he was in was pretty well closed down, as many were, and he ended up losing every single one of those LOIs. And it took him about a year to re-engage with sellers. Since that time, he had put together, I think, 13 or 14 LOIs, so he came roaring back for him. And I asked him a couple questions. I asked him what the financing terms were, and he said it was a 60-40 model, but the 60% are seller financed 100% over 5 years with no interest. 60% of the shares, $780,000, over 5 years with quarterly payments starting the 31st of March 2020. 22. And he has an option for 40% of the remaining shares. And then he just commented, as you know, I've had some issues getting the banks to accept no money down. There are some banks that will, there are some banks that will not. He's in an area where that's been more difficult, but he didn't let that stop him. He obviously went ahead and did it with seller finance. And he will find, now that he's completed his first deal, that some of those banks will change their position on that and will, in fact, accept no equity on his part. So he's going to find that improves. Doing the first deal is huge. So did it take him a while? Absolutely. To his credit, did he work through the pandemic when it looked like his chosen industry was falling apart? Yes, he did. And it's come roaring back for him, as evidenced by these LOIs. So both cases, I did have a close mentoring relationship with this person, Jake, but so that's a little different than Tanya's situation where I didn't speak with her. I clearly remember speaking to Jake a whole lot of times, so I'm glad that worked out, and he'll do well, I'm sure of that. So it's helpful to think about what can happen. It's, I think, important to keep these things in front of you so that you realize, yes, this is possible. Whether it's possible for you, I don't know you. I can't guarantee that, but I know the system works. Okay, so again, if you're interested in the Cyber Monday Now deal, just go over to brucewhipple.com, go to the boot camp, and you can grab that. And I will be doing a Facebook Live this coming Wednesday, which is December 1st. And only for Deep Dive Bootcamp members, I will do a Q&A on Friday, and that will, both of these are free, but to be able to participate in the one on Friday, you need to have bought the Deep Dive Bootcamp. So as December comes in here, you still have time, particularly with seller financing, to get a deal done. So I would encourage you to think about those two examples that I gave you and push forward. Take action. If you don't know what to do, grab the course, and that'll lead you through the steps and how to do them.